And welcome to another great episode of Get Spooled Fishing. Myself, Captain Jason Prieto in the house. Captain Travis, why are you laughing, man?
It's just funny hearing it, man.
We
hadn't heard it yet.
Debuted.
And Captain Beers, we're in the house. Captain Rick is in Georgia. He is doing something with that house.
Catfishing?
He's doing something important that needed his attention, so we're here.
Dang, Kevin Overstreet. Been waiting all week, dude.
Oh, man.
And
he's got all the questions then.
We're here. So
maybe the
we
answers.
We just did the big release. I mean, we should have had some
Not really.
some ribbons cut and whatever else across the screen. Travis, supposed to put ribbons across there.
We're going to put one across your head.
There we go. Don't cut it. You might cut me. But did the new release or the name on the show, and of course sponsored by Tampa Fishing Outfitters.
Right.
Title sponsor for I don't know, probably 10 years.
Close to it, yeah.
Long time.
From the radio days to now, and we greatly appreciate them and what they do to keep us going. And but here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So the new name,
faces,
we're going to have a new name, new logo. Show title is going to be Get Spooled now. Kind of off of that Get Schooled. But
Get Spooled Fishing. We're going to kind of bounce around that nomenclature, for lack of a better term. But so our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our YouTube channel will now be Get Spooled. The title name, Get Spooled. Technically presented by Tampa Fishing Outfitters, but we're going to use the namesake Get Spooled kind of going forward. So I believe that once we change the name of the Facebook page, I think anybody that follows the page or likes the page now, it'll just carry on. So instead of you seeing, updates from Tampa Fishing Outfitters live fishing report, it should be now Get Spooled. But so yeah, that's what we're going for, man. So we are now Get Spooled Fishing. Something a little different, a little twist to it. So
still the same crew.
Still the same crew.
Still the same spot.
Same old ugly guys up here. I think that's just maybe our connection.
Yeah.
Is our feed fuzzy or
Looks
is it
good
just
to me.
the connection?
Looks good to me.
Okay.
It's sharp,
Wow,
dude.
that's
That's like 1080p.
Kudos to Travis on that one.
Yeah.
We're playing. We're gonna mess with it. We might not be final yet, but we'll play with it and do some new banners and whatnot.
It's always good to roll with smart people.
Yeah, it is. I'll say.
So yeah, we're here. Well, let's talk a little fishing.
Make me look good all the time.
Let's talk a little fishing, man. Let's see what's going on. I can tell you that it is hot, man, in more ways than one.
Mm-hmm.
The last week, I want to say Tuesday was kind of like that boiling point for me. That was the day where it was like, all right, guys, it's hot.
Yeah.
And I actually filled in for a good buddy of ours, Captain Wes Burns, and I did one day of the kids camp. And generally, about 11:30 or so, it's a morning trip. You normally will take the kids, and they're about time to jump in and cool off before you take them back to the dock. So we'll normally head over to like Desperation Island or something like that and let the kids jump in for 15, 20 minutes before we head back. And normally they're the ones like, hey, Captain, can we go to the island? Can we go to the island and jump in? 11:30, I'm like, hey, guys, time to go to the island. We're going to go swimming today.
Time to go swimming.
And I backflipped right off the back and cooled down as well. So it's definitely hot,
Couldn't
man.
just go in normal. You had to do a backflip.
Oh, straight up, yeah. Cannonball.
One up like the kids.
Like the kids, dude. Like the kids.
Yeah, even our group last week, by the end of it, they wanted to get in that water. They were ready, dude.
That was actually kind of funny because it was like kids camp.
We were doing kids camp.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we didn't see that. We were there a little late.
I fished some of the same spots and had like the same routine, only it was adults.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing. They actually asked, hey, can we go swimming for a little bit?
Yep.
But other than that, guys, the fishing has been good. I will say it looks like my mic is kind of loud, so I'll try to talk a little softer.
Tone it down just a notch.
But it's definitely been hot. The water temperature's hot. I will say if you're gonna be inshore, you definitely want to do it early, or you want to do it later in the afternoon, which is no genius, thought, but it's certainly gonna increase your odds.
And ideally, if let's say that's not gonna work, I mean, there's probably a little temperature relief at the tail end of that incoming tide too. So that's just something to think about as, if you are going to go out there later and you could find that later incoming tide, which especially Upper Bay, I think this week has some later incoming tides. So if you can't get out or you're going to cut out of work early on a holiday week and you want to get out there in the afternoons, I think you've got some nice incoming water that should bring in a little bit cooler temps with it.
And we ran into a fellow captain and tournament angler, which we sat and had a conversation with
Yeah,
him.
that's
You
right.
left, and I had a conversation with him, and we were talking a little bit about this hot water, and he had actually fished some different area that I fished, and we were talking about the heat, and he'd actually been pretty successful. It was Captain Mickey Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
He was successful on some redfish, and we got to talking about the tides and which ones to kind of look for and this and that. And he made a really good comment, which I agree with and sort of practice too. But those incoming tides are going to bring cooler water generally in, from the Gulf, as opposed to those later afternoon outgoing tides.
Soaking hot water
in
up
reference to
Mhm.
inshore fishing, right, on the flats. And so if that tide is sort of starts in the afternoon and then tails off towards the evening, that tail end of that tide is generally going to be a little bit better than when that first initial push of all that hot water starts moving off the flats. And so that's just a little key if you are still targeting the inshore fish, redfish, snook, trout. Some things to consider that, as in different parts of the year, you necessarily wouldn't really have to as much. You're really just looking at tide. So if you're going to be a flats guy, you really got to pay attention to water temperature and what that tide's doing this time of year.
If I've had a good success in previous years, if you can mix, I've done good on reds in previous years, mixing a plus 2.5 high tide with an outgoing first thing in the morning, like 8 o'clock.
Mhm.
Right.
And you fish 2 hours of that outgoing, then you got to get out of there.
Right.
And you're catching that cooler water, because I'm seeing temps in the morning 86 to 85 to 87, somewhere in there. But by the afternoon, I'm marking stuff as high as 95 degrees
Yeah.
on the flats. So that's a pretty big window. And that overall is typically hotter than normal because we haven't had really the rain to cool things off. We had rain last week, and you could tell the difference the next morning. It was actually nice in the morning versus just that hot air. So you have to deal with that. I've been doing a lot more. I do a lot of bait fishing this time of year, but I've done more than usual. I think we've both kind of focused more on that than we did previous years. And it gives you a little bit more window on the fish. But we caught temps, or we caught in deeper water about a 41-inch snook the other day, and I had a real hard time reviving it. And we caught them on heavier tackle, and I just thought, man, this water it took me a while to get her to swim off, and I thought she might die. And I thought, well, maybe two things that came to mind was water temp A, and then B, maybe she's about to lay her eggs. At that big, they're going to be breeders. So, but the water temp even today in the middle of the bay was 90.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is even where I've been bay fishing, and it's funny that Mickey and I had this conversation just the other day, because you can watch the water temperature if you pay attention on an outgoing tide. Even sitting in the bay, you'll watch the water temperature increase, the surface water temperature of that water coming out. You'll notice that
because of where it's coming from.
Yeah, you'll be 2 degrees warmer in the afternoon, partial to the fact that the water in general is being heated up from the surface. But you'll definitely see an influx of heat coming out. With
So what's the thoughts on? So I put in at I went out. I took the family out to Beer Can yesterday, and I used the new Williams Park, which. Awesome, dude.
Did it? Nice.
Yeah, I mean,
I know.
I don't know who exactly was behind it, but I know a big face out there that was doing it was Captain Greg Leonard.
Yep.
I know he kind of sparked that whole initiative, and kudos, because that's a phenomenal ramp now. If we could just get that parking in order, but it is what it is. So
let me ask a question, because I haven't been down there. I didn't mean to interrupt, but and this may rub some people the wrong way, but what about all the Deer Lake sailboats and the folks
still there.
that were hanging out
they're all still there.
at the ramp?
Everything's still there. None of that's changed.
Okay.
What's changed is it's still the same layout. 2 boats could slide in on each ramp without bumping each other. It's all that cross-hatched cement, that your tires are going to get good grip on. The docks are nice. They're floating docks. They move up and down.
They made a floating dock now. So
they're awesome. They're good bumpers on them, dude. You're not going to scratch your boat up. It's top notch. I'll be honest with you. Now, when I say that to say this, when we're talking about water temp, I couldn't believe I put in at 10:15 in the morning. So when we say 10:15 in the morning, you just hit it on the head. That's 2 hours into the day at least.
Yeah.
That's generally time to be off of that. That water temperature was only like 83 there. So what limited rain we've been getting is definitely cooling off. So around the mouth of that, there's also some temperature relief. So, think about that if you have that in your area, a river, a creek source, or somewhere where there's going to be some freshwater runoff, you might be able to find some cooler water temps around that too.
Yeah, but the fishing has been the inshore, like I would say, flat stuff for me has not been very good. Probably the worst I've seen in a while. I've had a hard time getting small snook to bite, and I think a little bit of it is water temperature. I think a little bit of it is added pressure to our area. One thing that kind of tough this time of year is, in the spring and the fall, we got hundreds of spots we can hit, every point, every creek. When you start getting to the summer, these fish move out to main areas, and there's less spots to hit, really. I mean, there's stuff on the flats, but the congregation of fish is in some main spots, and them spots have really been getting pounded. So it's been tough. Actually, last Thursday I couldn't do it. I had to help Danny. Danny got his boat back with a fuel tank and got a fuel tank put in. I had to go help him, but otherwise I was going to get in the tunnel hall and go run north to go look around a little bit, because leading into that, I was also fishing 3 hours of flat tide, but there was a spot that I rolled in that there hadn't been a lot of boats there, but there was I was actually in shock. I come off playing my tower. I'm like, whoa. And it was a sand flat. As you can see, there was like probably 75 snook, and there was males and there was like females laying off this ledge. And so I swung around, and they didn't shift off, but I went to cut bait, and I went to live bait, I went to chumming, and we caught one.
Yeah.
Not two, not three. I felt like I could have foul hooked more than that.
Right.
So it's just been a little tough on.
I'm seeing the same struggles. I mean, it's more like right now I'm just really trying to pick and choose on when to, like, if that's what somebody says they want to do, like if they want to incorporate snook and redfish into the trip. Right now I'm being very particular about how I'm going to plan that trip. The bait that I'm going to bring or the bait that I'm going to catch, and when is the window to do it. And that's really been leading to my success, is picking and choosing that 90-minute window of when you think it's going to be best, when you expect to have the strongest current. Ideally, for me, the incoming tide, and having a variety of baits, live and dead, that I can put in front of the fish. That's been the success. But outside of that window, hasn't been very good either.
No, it's been a lot of work. But we're also having influx of guides coming either from St. Pete or from Sarasota, Bradenton. And that's probably due to red tide. I think some of their stuff's dried up, and we've got a lot of fish in the bay. So that's an everyday pressure that we're seeing in some of these south areas. But it's part of the game. We just got to go to the drawing board every once in a while. But the bay fishing has been really good.
Yeah.
It's been work. Sometimes it's a lot of break-offs, because you're getting schooled a lot. But
bring extra hooks, bring extra leader.
Hooks. I will say, though, one of the positive notes, and I've talked about this for years now, but what I've started to notice is a decline in the amount of sharks I'm catching.
Yes.
It typically happens in the first part of summer. These sharks, man, they just move in full force. And I honestly think that it's a migration, that these fish actually keep going up into the bay. Because I was actually up north 3 days ago or whatever it was, and there was a lot of sharks on the flats up there that I hadn't seen in the last few weeks. And so I think these fish sort of move in, and they'll stage up along with the bait. The big bait move, especially heading north. And so that's been a positive for catching tarpon, catching grouper, catching snappers, et cetera, because a lot of times those sharks, though they're fun, right, nobody wants to catch 30, 40 sharks.
No.
Right?
A couple on a trip is great. But
and knowing that there's good quality game fish around and you can't get to them is sort of frustrating. So a lot of the spots that I'd fished earlier in the summertime, I'm going back now and I'm fishing them again, that we were just getting sharked out. And now we're actually pulling up those snappers and groupers and hooking tarpon, et cetera. So
speaking of which, Eric Olson commented, how are you guys feeling about the early grouper bite in the bay? I've been reading very strong opinions on each side.
Opinions as far as is good or bad? Or
yeah, I guess you'd have to clarify for me on Eric on what you mean by opinions. I'm feeling like it's pretty good.
It's decent.
All things considered. What I'll say is I'm getting more legal fish.
There's definitely some bigger fish around than typically this time of year. A lot of times, oddly enough, our bigger gags are like August plus. Like once that water starts to cool down, we'll start to get some of them big studs. Now, is it the fact that they're moving in or they're there and not really eating very well? I don't really know. But I can tell you this, that in the last month of bay fishing, we have lost a lot of big grouper.
Yeah.
We've been smoked several times. In fact, another local used to be captain, Captain Nick Winger, was out with his fiance, girlfriend, or whatever, and they got a big gag. And I mentioned something, and he even made a comment and said, "I've been seeing a lot more big gags around
ones that we can't get up
this time of year."
I haven't caught the numbers. We got a 29 today, 28. I had a 30 the other day. Today we caught some unders. Haven't caught a whole lot of unders, and there's some stuff that I fished, I'd say about 8 years ago, that was really good. Now, granted, I haven't put a lot of time in on the spots because on charters you can't sit there for 2 hours and not catch.
Right.
I've hit these spots and I'm like, man, they're not putting the numbers. I will tell you, I hit some snapper stuff and was very, very disappointed. However, it is still early. We just hit July, but. I would say I'm not hitting the amount, but I have caught some good fish.
I'd say that for me personally, with the early tarpon season that we sort of had, I was catching a lot of gags in with my tarpon fishing, right? Bringing those fish up off the bottom.
I didn't catch the amount that I thought I did based on the amount of time I put in those spots.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I will say that the majority of those fish
were big.
Came in the deeper areas.
Okay.
So like on the deeper ledges. So some of the shallower spots, like some of the main reefs and a couple of the rock piles that I like to fish that are 15, 20 foot, aren't producing the groupers. But when I'm fishing adjacent to 40, 45 feet, I'm getting those groupers. So for me, I look at it and I think that those fish are staying deeper to stay in that cooler water. As we fall into fall, I think these fish are going to start showing up a little bit more on our shallow rock piles. Guys are going to be getting them in residential canals. Things like that.
I love grouper fishing in the bay. Absolutely. Yeah. I actually, me and you and James and Rick, we ought to jump in the boat. I got some stuff that I got a bunch of numbers that I just haven't had time to hit. You can't do it on trips.
I've got a ton, and over the years we've tried to.
Yeah,
you always say, "Let's go do it."
Next month, I know we're going to slow down. We ought to just get in the boat, drop the trolling motors down, and start working these areas because I know some of them are great ledges. But it's that kind of stuff you really can't do on a charter because you're going to hit dead spots.
And it's just so tide specific. I had a guy.
And it's so tough to get one off the bottom sometimes, man. It really is.
Well, some of these areas though aren't. They're not crazy ledges. They're just good bottom. I know because a sheep's head fished some of them. And so some of these areas wouldn't be as bad as where we fished today. I went through 50 yards of Hero fluorocarbon in a week. I'm like, dude, actually, I want a quiz real fast to ask people with dirty water this time of year, do you prefer you think fluorocarbon versus mono?
You want to poll the audience.
Yeah.
You want to poll the audience.
Fluorocarbon versus mono is that big of a difference?
Yeah.
And I know my answer only.
I agree with you, Bob. I was saying his number's my boat, man. We can definitely go check it out.
I'm all about somebody else's numbers.
Somebody else's numbers are the best kind, but
so what
you said on the depth is key. I've done 85% of my snapper and grouper fishing in 30 feet plus, right? Yep. And I know that we've kind of talked, and you're saying the snapper's going to get better. We know that, but that depth seems to be key. So that means shipping channel ledges, some of the deeper areas, some of the deeper reefs that have that sit in 30 feet and have just a little bit of relief. That's been key for me.
And kind of consequently, you and I ran a group, or not really a group trip, but we kind of just shared a trip on your boat several weeks ago.
Yep.
And one of the things that we were doing was, you've got the edges of the shipping channel. I'm gonna talk about, let's just say, the main shipping channel that runs all the way up the bay.
Yep.
Any of that in there is going to be good. Mm-hmm. Now, there's certain areas that are obviously going to be better than others, but let's just use that as an example and say
you're not going to go very far in that channel without seeing a grouper if you're on the bottom.
No, but you need to be in the right spot, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we were getting ready to set up, and I was on the bow, right? And James and I were kind of both working this, and I said, well, let's set up in 30 feet. And what that tells me is I know that I'm in the trough. If I'm in 30 feet, I know that it's 15 feet on that side. I know that it's 45 feet on that side.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sitting in 30, I'm sitting in that edge, which is where those groupers are.
Yep.
They're sitting on those ledges. And so the trolling motor, our Rodan, that is like the cat's meow to be able to do that, mm-hmm. right? Because back in the day, you'd have to anchor up tide, get your boat to
the
set
wind just
back.
changed, turn the motor.
Yeah, now you're off of it on it. And so the trolling motor, the fixed GPS trolling motor deal, GPS anchors, have changed the game 100% when it comes to
it's
fishing those ledges. Fishing those edges to be in 30 feet, 28 feet. If you can put your boat in that mark and you know that you're on the edge of a channel, odds are you're going to draw snappers, groupers, even the sharks, the tarpon. They all run in that ditch most of the time.
It's changed the game just like power pole changed the game on the shallow.
Flats.
Yep.
The trolling motors changed because you can just precisely put your boat in without a whole lot of error. I'll be honest with you, if it's too rough for my trolling motor, I have legit have not thrown my anchor in months. Like I probably could have today. We fished the same spot the whole day, but I really don't care. And they want us. Rodan wants us to run these things. Like I don't have the power pole charge yet. I don't have any. All I got is just onboard chargers and
normal stuff.
I got Group 27 AGMs, and I ran that thing today for 6-7 hours straight. Yeah. And the batteries were still green. The green lights are green.
And I've got the 24.
Yeah.
I've got the 24.
And it holds your boat fine.
I got the 24. I'm running 2 Group 31 Duracells, the AGMs, but I've also got the Stealth 1. And we ran a trip. You were out there at Bean with me, or at Southwest. I ran a trip in the morning. Finished with those guys, trolling motor all over the flats, moved into areas, ran across the bay, picked up my clients for the afternoon, ran out to the beach, and still had 50% battery when I came back in.
You know what I just realized we all have in common? We're all using those Duracells.
Yeah,
those AGMs.
Sam's are good batteries.
It's a good battery, yeah.
I know. They're great batteries. People ask that question all the time. I always want to answer, but I'm like,
they're a Deca battery.
Yeah.
I will say this, and I ended up folding and going to the Duracells, my last purchase, but I did run the Electro battery, Group 31s. I ran them for 2 years. I wanted to kill them, and I did. I mean, I finally, just to the point where they won't charge anymore. I had dropped a couple cells. But for 2 years, for a $100 battery, a Group 31,
that's a good.
If you're a guy that's going to run your boat, 10 hours a month and keep it on charge when you get home, man, that's a great choice for a battery.
That's the most important thing there is what you said is there was a debate. I saw it on one of the Facebook communities where somebody was like wanting to get input on batteries, right? And me personally, I've never had bad luck with batteries. And I'd say when I became serious about angling in the last 10 years of, really dialing in chargers, batteries, all that on my personal boats, that's the key, though, is any battery should be a good battery if when you get home it hits the charger and it stays on float and it's conditioned properly.
Well, there's shelf life, too, on batteries.
Of course.
Sometimes if they're sitting there forever, you'll get
Yeah, that's a big – right. But let's say if you bring home a proper battery, a good working battery, I think that more important than the quality of the battery is
keeping it charged.
Yes,
and making sure it doesn't sit long after use.
They say if you get below 50% on your battery, then you're killing the life of the battery.
Yeah. Every time.
Yes. And so how I learned a lot, I knew a good bit about batteries, but I learned a lot more about batteries by talking to Danny at Stealth. Danny will talk your ear off.
Yeah, Danny knows his stuff.
He's a lot of good knowledge. A lot of guys, I'm going to throw this out here real quick since we're talking about trolling motors.
Peace out, Kev. Thanks, buddy.
One thing that he had mentioned, and Kevin, before you leave, buddy, we're going to do a prop. We're going to do a prop show. Overstreet needs some help. He calls me twice a week. No, we're going to do it soon. We're going to do a prop show. But, a lot of...
We'll bring him in to show him the difference between like a 3-blade, 4-blade prop. That way he's just clear.
One that runs good. How about that? But a lot of engine manufacturers now require, they say, 1,000 cranking net battery. And I think we had this conversation. You asked about batteries. Danny brought up a good point to me. The problem with a lot of 1,000 cranking net batteries, you have to look at your reserve minutes. Reserve minutes is when you run your live wells,
your GPS, your radio,
that draws your battery down.
Blenders.
So the higher that reserve minute,
coffee makers,
the longer the higher that reserve minute, the longer it's going to last. So
popcorn machine.
Basically, what you want to run is an 800 cold cranking amp with a 200 reserve. 800, 200 is and when that battery is ran down to like say halfway, you're going to have more cranking amps than the 1,000.
The 200 is the reserve capacity in minutes.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Let's talk about something real quick too. The difference between a deep cycle and a cranking battery, because what ends up happening is this kind of folds into what you're talking about, right? It's that reserve time, and how much cranking amps off of your reserve time, what do you get once you're halfway gone with the battery? What's your cranking amps now?
Yeah.
Right? What's your capacity now? And if you've got a dedicated cranking battery, right, and you're running your trolling motor, that's separate, right? So you're draining those 2 trolling motor batteries or 3 trolling motor batteries. Most of us, like I do, I have the same 3 batteries in my boat. I've got a Group 31 AGM for the battery 1. Battery 2 is a Group 31. Battery 3, they're all 3 the same.
Mm-hmm.
I use that same deep cycle battery as a starting battery, but it performs more deep cycle tasks than it does starting tasks. And that's your lights, your GPS, your radio, your all those types of things.
Same for us. That's how our boats
slow draw loads, right? They're just continuously drawing a load. When you go to crank that boat, you know, that's when you're using those cranking amps. That's when you want that reserve capacity in the battery. And so with your deep cycle batteries, you're draining those at your trolling motor pace, and what you want is when you do drain your cranking battery, then when you switch over, you've got enough cranking amps on battery 2 off your trolling motor system that you can crank your motor, or you go to both and you get the parallel
There's
effect.
something else that I want to share real quick, because I had to tow a guy in to the marina based on he was out there using his trolling motor, shark fishing all night, and he had a brand new boat. And I know exactly what the problem was, but he ran his trolling motors dead, and then he ran his cranking dead, and I think they were sharing a trolling motor, which I do.
Yep.
When you buy a boat, I can almost promise you there's going to be Group 24, probably interstate batteries in the boat. I'm not going to say they're horrible, but they're horrible. They don't have any reserve minutes. When you buy a boat, do yourself a favor before you take delivery of it. Look in there, ask them what group is. There's a Group 24, a Group 27, a Group 31. The higher that number, the bigger the battery, typically the longer the reserve minutes. Go ahead and ask them to upgrade to at least a Group 27 or 31 to save yourself the headache, because every boat manufacturer does the bare minimum with batteries. I have not seen one that puts a big battery in there, not unless you request it.
No, good comment, and I'll follow up with that and say I had a similar situation at the ramp one morning. Guy brings a brand new boat down, backs it down the ramp. It won't start. He's having him fit with it. The wife's in the truck, you know, and I could tell this is all going south real quick. So I hopped over and I said, hey, man, you need a jump, you know, your battery dead or whatever. And he goes, no, this, that, and the other. Well, he had it on battery 1 and the boat wouldn't crank. I put it over to both and the battery cranked. And I said, did you plug the batteries in? He's like, man, these are brand new. Everything's brand new. I said, and I looked in there, and just that. He had a little baby Bodunk Autocraft Group 24 battery that the battery 1 by itself, charged full capacity, wouldn't even crank the motor. So I said, oh, well, I'll just keep it on both. Well, no. You need to go get a battery that
can support
the system only using a single battery. And I see a lot of guys that on the norm run their boat on both on the battery switch, and that's horrible, because once you drain that capacity, you're toast. You're better off leaving it on 1, letting it drain down,
and then
go to battery 2 and put them in both, or both, or whatever the case may be.
Well, another good idea to do. So if you do end up draining your, say you typically have it's either 1, 2, or all, or you have a house or emergency start, which I don't like, which my boat has.
You don't like that?
No, I like it having 1, 2, or all. I don't have the option to go to 2.
Gotcha, I'm with you.
I have to go to all.
It's just a different configuration.
It is.
The way
they don't
Remember when I called you when my original battery that came with the boat died, and I was like,
"What do I do?"
And I've never seen a boat that had the emergency.
It's
so I'm here reconnecting batteries.
Part of that came to light because the company Blue Sea or whatever made a relay. Called like an EMCR or something like that, and it's the charging relay.
It catches fire.
It's a system, and so that's where that whole thing came from. Was it senses the battery life on 1 and it will pull over and draw juice from battery 2, basically. But anyway, it confused the old school 1, 2, both are off.
That's what I like.
Danny's caught on fire.
That's how I do mine. That's how I do all my boats.
I ripped mine off.
What's ours? Ours is that
it's off 1. Or
emergency
is basically all.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend, if you do run, just say 1 off, and you're going to kick emergency on, when you go to emergency and you're running to your next spot, leave it, because it's charging the entire system.
Yeah.
When you stop and shut your motor off, go back to 1. That way you don't run your other battery.
The other batteries down, yeah.
But I can tell you, 9 out of 10 times they have a Group 24. Canyon Bay did it. I started telling them, don't put just give me a credit. I don't even want your battery. I'll go buy my
We'll do the batteries.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it with the Pathfinder.
I provided my batteries.
I want to know what I have there because these newer engines, there's no getting them cranked. They need a minimum voltage, and it's usually a 11. I think it's like a 10.7, or they'll just click or they'll beep.
Yep.
So you don't want to have battery problems.
So in summary, biggest size battery you can get. Review the cranking amps and the reserve minutes.
And familiarize yourself with your boat. Know your battery switch. Know which batteries.
Oh,
are
definitely,
and
definitely.
The guy was like, I had my battery switch on run the trolling motor. I get it happens, but just before you jump in a new boat, have the dealer, you just paid X amount of dollars, have them spend 20 minutes to go over every little thing with you that has to do with safety, because I see it every day, and it just people don't do it, and they don't ask questions, and they're not going to do it if they don't ask.
And think about the investment too, like when you look at a 24 and a 31. Like let's say we're comparing a model battery. Generally, when we go from a 24 to a 27, it's a minimal jump. Most batteries probably $10 or $15 to increase that next size, and again from 27 to 31. So you might be spending an extra 20, 30, maybe $40 to jump up to that biggest size. But the lifespan of that battery and how much or how less you're going to cross that 50% threshold that our conversation started on. So a 31 is going to take a lot more power and a lot more draw to go below that halfway point, which is inevitably fatal to the battery, than a 24. So even if a 24 can support it, you're not going to see the longevity that you will with the bigger battery.
And I want to add one more thing.
Steven hit the nail on the head. That's what I was going to talk about next.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, with the whole batteries thing, with the lithium batteries.
Yeah, good point, Steve.
Lithiums are great, but I've sat down, and we even got offered discounts on them. I can't justify it. I can buy 6 wet cell batteries with a 1-year warranty, which gives me 6 years of warranty, for the price that it costs for one lithium. And you being a ex-electrical guy, the problem with lithiums, it seems like there's a lot of technical stuff to go wrong in that battery.
The problem is with lithium, when they die, they die.
Yeah.
And they don't, just like a lithium, you ever use a lithium flashlight? Like an LED flashlight, a lot of times.
Is it lithium? Which one's the freaking lightweight one? Is that lithium?
Yeah, that's
lithium.
Okay, I'm having a brain
lithium
fart.
ion.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they go from, what happens is they go from charged to dead. There's no, they don't drain. They're full capacity.
They're either running or they're
off. They're either on or off. That's basically how they work.
AGMs will drain really fast too. One more thing I want to add, since we're on charging, if you do have a dead battery and you crank your outboard up, a lot of outboards, minus the new V8, do not really put a charge out at 800 RPMs. So you need to if you're trying to charge your batteries at the dock, put it neutral, bump it up to 1200 to get your alternator actually putting a charge out. Because at 800, typically they're just running the motor. So just little stuff to do, but I've actually had to tow 2 people in the last 3 weeks. And also, Boat US, get a membership. If you own a boat, you should own some kind of tow service.
Yeah, you're right. No, 100%. Or know a good buddy out there.
Yeah.
But the charging system.
Or take your phone number if you're doing tows. We could just give out your. In case of emergency.
I'm about done with tows.
Lee Blick, I think, is the tow master. He even has a hat. It's
but get with
Captain Lee's tow service.
But what about
Lee Blick?
The school over there in St. Pete by O'Neill's.
Eckerd College.
Eckerd College.
Eckerd College is free.
Yeah, Eckerd College is free.
That's a good one. But no, what I was going to say was,
you're right,
if
John.
you're willing to make the investment and you see a need in your boat to invest some money in these batteries, and because of what's going on, whether you're using them and they're dying or whatever the case may be, go ahead and equally invest in the charging system.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I see a lot of guys that'll go spend $400, $500, $600 on batteries. When they get their boat home, they pull out the old Schumacher, charger that they use for their car when it doesn't start, and they clamp it on and let it rip. Go ahead and invest your money in a good onboard charging system. Stealth One makes a great charging system. The other one that I would recommend is a Dual Pro. They make a probably, in my opinion, outside of the Stealth One because of its functions.
Yeah.
Dual Pro makes the best onboard boat charger.
Well, PowerPole's got some stuff coming publicly soon that's game changer. The charge, and they've got a system that ties in. It's kind of complicated, but it's going to be a game changer on how they're doing it, and will eliminate some of these issues we're talking about. I right now all I bought the chargers at West Marine that are they might be dual pro or they're yellow. They got the yellow edges.
That's dual.
They wasn't expensive.
Depends on different models they have.
There's different models.
I bought 2 of the 2 banks because they don't have a 4 bank. They got a 3 or 2. I think they were
I'm with
like
Steven,
$300
man.
total, and they do a great job.
That NOCO has been Pathfinder came outfitted with the chargers I've got in it now, which have been great.
I had that one.
That's the Pro Sportsman, I think.
It's
like the
friggin' huge.
Yeah, it's huge. I like it, but the NOCO for the value, that Genius charger, I've never been able to beat one down. I mean, or have any issues with it.
There's a guy that and a lot of folks know him. His name's Tom Mahoney, and Tom is one of the owners of TA Mahoney's, and this was probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I got connected with the Interstate dealer. There's an Interstate dealer up in Tampa, and it all came about where I actually went to TA Mahoney, pick up a couple batteries. I was using the Interstates at the time. They were out of them. He said, "Man, just run up to my dealer and pick one up, or pick a couple up. Tell him I told you to come up there." So I went up there, ended up meeting the guy that runs the dealership up there or for Interstate, and we got to kind of talking a little bit, and he had like a testing thing set up where he had Interstate batteries all set up, same battery, and then he had a light, like a incandescent light bulb hooked up to each one, and then a different charger hooked up to each one. And the principle of the little test that he was doing, what he said was for Tom to figure out which is the best trolling motor or battery charger to put on his bass boat. Those guys are eating batteries left and right. So what they did was they took a battery, the same battery, they discharged the battery completely with a load, which is a light bulb. So you just let it run until the light completely goes out, because you're going to discharge the battery completely. It's going to take whatever voltage 2 volts will literally illuminate it, and it'll just completely discharge the battery. And the point of the test was to see which charger would bring a dead battery back to life to full charge.
Right.
And it has to do with the sensing components in the charger, because a battery will show full voltage, right? Potential voltage, but is it really there? Right. And so some battery chargers, they'll charge the battery. They'll say, "Oh yeah, it's 100%." Well, as soon as it turns off, it's really only like 40% of the battery. And so that's what you get when you start going to those lower model battery chargers, is they just don't have the sensing equipment in them to tell whether or not that battery is truly fully charged.
Yep.
And so what he told me was Dual Pro, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Minn Kota Prestige or whatever it is they sell.
It is.
Were pretty close, but he thought the Dual Pro was just a touch better on its ability to charge a battery from fully discharged to fully charged, because a lot of battery chargers won't. It'll show phantom voltage and think that the battery's charged and shut off. So something to consider, because a lot of times, especially lead acid batteries, they get hot, and that'll throw a battery charger off too. So just some things to consider.
We got a question here from John. Actually, you know what? Let's revisit. I want to make sure Kevin, who I'm going to be traveling with this weekend on vacation, if you guys are under the impression that your insurance company covers towing, don't go just by your insurance agent told you your towings are covered. Get all the details onto what kind of towing's covered, how far, what are your limits, so is it in your home waters, is it, do some investigating there before you just go out on the water assuming that towing's covered through your insurance company. I've seen a lot of people.
If you're down south, you got to get with my boy Captain Kyle Potts with Towboat US, man. I'll hook you up with him. So if you get broke down over there, I got you hooked up.
Check your policy. So you definitely want to check your policy.
Hey, you ain't sitting there getting ate by skeeters.
Hey, Josh Robbins, Treasure Island area right now. Are there tarpon and reds on right now? Tough.
Not my area.
Well, he's saying maybe Egmont Key. I can tell you, if you want to go tarpon fishing on Egmont Key, I would strongly advise you to do so.
This week,
in fact, actually, when you say right now, yes, right now.
It might be done. I think the tide bottomed out at 6:30.
No, it's been late, man.
It's still late. It's still been rolling.
You're still getting tarpon right now, but hey, if you want to go tarpon fishing, go out there. Yeah, you should be able to do it.
Join the 50 boats.
Yep, just spend the $125 a year for Towboat US. Yeah. That's a good call, and you get a number to call. Everything's right there. We agree, Judy.
I mean, you can't.
Not to mention,
we're in a rock and a tough spot. I was on my way to a charter, happened to stop by this marker. The dude's like can you tow me here? I said, I'm towing you where I'm going, and that's it. I got to pick a charter. Like, we're working.
Yeah.
So, we're on a time schedule. People are paying us, but I'm not going to leave somebody stranded.
You can't leave somebody stranded, of course.
So we towed him in. We went there. We got a handle. But, the other guy, I was trying to get my daughter to volleyball. I'm leaving, and he's like, can you tow me in right here? And I'm like, all right. So Towboat US, I said, there's your man right there. He goes, oh, I can't afford to spend $350 an hour. And I'm like thinking, well, maybe you can't afford to have a boat. Like, so and we ended up.
Let me tell you, we might be in the wrong business. I want to get in that tow business. I saw that story about the guy who got towed in. It was $8,500 or something. Did you hear about this?
No.
Oh, it was all over the news. He has a membership somewhere, and
expired like 2 days before.
No. Apparently, the technicality of his boat wasn't being towed; it was being salvaged. Kicked in, so he's coming back to the dock thinking everything's all good, and then he got hit with an $8,500 bill.
Ouch.
Yeah. So just
and actually, Tommy Dominguez has actually covered me because he towed him in for me. I wasn't gonna leave him there, but I had to get my daughter to practice, and we were pushed for time. But just long story short, get you some tow insurance. It takes a lot of stress out of being stranded out there. What if you're somewhere and it's getting dark and you can't get, and nobody's coming by?
Yeah. Those are the situations I worry about.
Yeah.
Is when someone's not available. On a Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock, find somebody.
For
Josh,
sure.
I'm a Mercury guy. I like that comment, but they all break, brother.
Can you share some on the info on the Minn Kota game-changing technology? Well, I think what we're saying, Douglas, is that, and it's not Minn Kota, it's not road. I mean, it's there's a lot of this now. It's the GPS anchor lock feature that you'll find on the Rodan. Basically, any wireless trolling motor.
Motor Guide, Minn Kota, and Rodan.
They have the ability to, instead of using an anchor to hold you on a spot, you can actually deploy a trolling motor, hit a button on the remote, hit the lock feature, and boom, you're there.
And Rodan actually has so the big obstacle until the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years has been the length of the shaft. The longest was a 60. Rodan has came out with a 72, which Minn Kota and Motor Guys got a 72. Rodan has taken a step further.
84.
A beast,
84
bro.
inch. They're running them on 30-foot yellow fins, which
things are taller than us, dude.
Some people might sound stupid, but this time of year, if you're offshore, it doesn't take much to hold a big boat because there's no wind or nothing. And actually, how hard is it to anchor when there's no wind and little tide? Like, you're trying to hit a rock pile.
When you're constantly swinging, you know, like anybody that's been offshore fishing, right? You've been in this scenario where you anchor up and you start dropping, right? And everybody's hammering fish.
Oh, we're
like 15
spot.
minutes later, nobody's catching a fish. And then 10 minutes later, everybody's hammering fish. And then you swing. You're just doing this. And every time you come over the spot, you get hammered, So it's definitely a game changer when you can sit on that spot and let the motor do the work, and you know that you're dropping down over the good spot, or over the area.
So there's just so many things in the last 10 years, technically, that make this job easier for the average Joe, for the guides, and some guys don't want to spend the money. For me, I've always looked at stuff like that as tools, and if the tools make me better and make my job easier, it's typically not a money issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always a money issue, but it's when it makes you that much better, it's going to pay for itself.
Well, yeah, think about it like this. Like, you buy this boat, you buy all this, right? You might have a lot invested. The number could be whatever it is. But if you start to look at those additional things like a power pole, a GPS trolling motor, something like that, and you spread it out over, hey, how many fishing trips am I going to do this year? 50? And so now $2,000 becomes a lot less if you look at it per trip. I'm investing only $20 or something to have that. It's going to save you time. It's going to catch you more fish. I can guarantee that an iPilot, if you're somebody who bottom fishes, is 100% going to catch you more fish. If bottom fishing is your deal and you're on a bay boat or something that can utilize that technology that's available, you will catch more fish with that feature on your boat than having to deal with an anchor. And you'll have more fishing time to do so. So, I mean, think about it like that. Don't just look at the price tag on it. At some point for all of us, and it was a hard pill to swallow,
I just look at it, Jason, you started guiding and I started guiding. I didn't have a power pole when I first started guiding. I didn't. I had an anchor, and I had a wing. No, I didn't.
You had the wing.
I had a wing anchor.
That's right. I remember you got.
You remember I got my first power.
You're right.
Now it wasn't my first power pole. I had it on my flats boats.
No, that's right.
But when my first guide boat that I bought for guiding, I didn't have a power pole. Yeah, my Triton.
Because I remember you got it and you put it on there.
Yeah, I got a power pole. And it was all part of that startup where I was like,
gotta get it.
I don't really need it.
But the wing wasn't that bad when you wasn't chartering and you're out there with your wife having fun. But when you start doing it every day and you're going.
It's the one-man band syndrome. Yeah. It's like I tell people now, I mean, heck, I got everything on a remote on my neck. Right?
Hey, Travis starts to get comfortable about everything. Hey, Bob, hey, pull that wing.
Yeah, pull that wing up there, Bob, But... the guys see me on the boat, like, oh my gosh, is he controlling it with his remote? He's doing this, he's doing that. I can stand in the back of my boat, rig rods, set the trolling motor, set the power, move to another spot, not have to get everybody out of my way, clear the deck, that whole deal. And so it just makes life easier. But and the other one was, do you make the investment on the second power pole? Is it really worth it? Do we really need two?
I had one for years.
I'd never have another boat without two power poles.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can get away with it. It keeps. I tell you what, 2 does is 2.
That's it. That's it, Nick.
Yes, Nick hit the nail on the head. 2 power poles will if you have a big bay boat, last longer because when you have one and you start using
a lot of pressure,
a lot of stress on the bolts and the joints.
So let's look at it this way then. If you're somebody out there who's got their boat right and they're trying to factor this in, 2 power poles or a power pole and an iPilot or a Rodan.
You will be fine with one. I don't think it's a huge.
Depends on what you're doing. Totally depends on what you're doing.
Really on cost, but if you can afford 2 is better.
Yep.
But for an average Joe though, like us, is a little different.
If you're a guy that's fishing offshore, or if your gig is reef fishing. 90% of the time, don't even buy a power pole. Yeah. Or I mean, I shouldn't say it like that, but I mean, if it's an investment, situation, you definitely need to have your trolling motor. Unless you're doing a lot of drifting, like permit fishing or something like that, you're drifting over wrecks. That was really cool when they came out with the drift paddles. You could drift across the wrecks.
Yeah, right.
That was a big deal.
Let's get back and answer Josh's. He's new to the page. First off, thanks for tuning in, buddy. We guide primarily inshore, nearshore, so any species that can be had on, west central Florida, whether it's all your inshore, redfish, snook, trout, mackerel, tarpon, snapper, grouper, triple tail, cobia, sharks. Am I forgetting anything?
Catfish,
whiting,
sea bass, pufferfish, pinfish,
catfish,
dude, yeah. Pinfish been good.
We can glorify
flounder. Yeah.
Hey, if it's there, I'll catch it.
But honestly, man, primarily inshore, nearshore stuff to kind of answer that question for you, pal.
Well, why don't we give out our name and number so that he knows in case he does want to call us. You start us off, James.
What did he say?
Hang on. I got a couple.
What did Andy say? What did he say?
Where are we at?
Go down.
All right, Andy Lopez. The only thing Travis needs is a fuel dolly.
Yes. He's seen me with the cans.
There you go. Poor man's dual power pole. Add the wang. 1 power pole and a wang, dude. That's all you need.
Well, that's what I was saying. I did that for years. And
a lot of guys will still use it. 2 power poles down.
Yeah. 2 power poles on a 24-foot boat's not going to hold it sideways.
And then a wang anchor or a stick anchor up front will sometimes keep you where you need to be.
But it gives you the stopping power. Like you can put it down and you're going to stop.
It's definitely better. You can get away with 1. But
my power poles are like slight anchors, slight brakes.
Yeah.
Brakes.
Slight bumpers. How many times do you go back? Put a power pole down so you don't smash your boat.
Yeah. Pull it out, yeah. How many times have you trimmed your engine into the ground so you don't smash your boat?
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, on that. So, well, now that you feel good about going out with us.
Let's book a charter, James.
All right, so Captain James Beers, my business name's Local Knowledge Fishing Adventures, localknowledgefishing.com. Phone number 813-625-2067.
SteadyActionFishingCharters.com. Captain Jason Prieto, 813-727-9890.
Captain Travis Yaeckel, Instinct Fishing Co. My cell phone number is 813-830-3474. Or you can go to my website. It's www.fishbyinstinct.com.
I love that your phone number is 813-727.
I always say
what are you doing, buddy?
No, I've had that number since I was 20 years old, and since it's a 727 number, I always say 813 because
right, yeah, you get thrown off with that,
and I'm way too deep in it to change it.
Yeah, you can't change it at this point.
It's like I've had that number for 20 years. So, yeah, it's always the 813.
Well, cool, guys. Well, we're coming up on 8 o'clock. I'm getting hungry. I know you guys
hungry.
are too.
Yep.
We got to fish.
Got a lot of comments.
Stuff tomorrow. But, yeah, thanks for participating tonight, guys. I hope you like the new look of the show.
Travis, thanks for the banner. You did a
awesome job.
We got it. We'll keep working on it, guys.
And,
we'll do some cool stuff. You know what I was thinking, too? I'm going to throw some ideas out here. Probably do some trivia up there. We'll write our trivia questions up. And then
CNN style, like
we're going to hope to do,
banner.
Get these how-to videos
Breaking
rolling,
news.
guys.
How to.
So, that's something else for the folks that are just tuning in, or maybe folks that have been with us for a while. Feel free to fire some stuff off on our page or send us messages of stuff that you want to see, because going into this next year, term year, we're looking at doing a lot more how-to videos and hopefully bringing some content to you guys that you guys want to see. So give us some ideas. Let us know what you want to hear about. Let us know what you want to see, learn about, and we'll do our best to get some stuff put together.
Josh Robbins, the answer to your question is Rick. He's not here. He's the best of us.
Rick is the best.
Yeah.
And guys, if you like our show, spread the word, share away, tell people to like our page. We come in every week and we try to bring some good information week in and week out. So until then, tight lines, catch them up, and get spooled.
Yep.